results, rewards in this world are merely thrills. They're merely excitements. Notice how we hunger after rewards, the compliment, the raise, anything. On what part of us does the thrill fall? It can't fall on the right part of us, because the kingdom of heaven within is complete. It needs nothing. It can't get anything from the world, from any other human being, from any human being. Therefore, all rewards that consist merely of a shaking of an excitement are false. They're not necessary. They're only pseudo-necessary to the pseudo-existence of the invented personality. Now you have to see for yourself, at the moment you get the reward, what happens to you inwardly as a result of getting it. Take, what's a very common thing? A compliment again. Some little compliment, which is mechanical and automatic. People just toss those things out. Oh, it's a lovely new dress, things like that. And even you don't half hear it because you sense the emptiness of it. But sometime you'll get some kind of a verbal reward from someone. You watch carefully how for a brief minute you feel affirmed, right? You feel real. You feel you feel as if your world is okay after all. Now, if you need something in time to get that, it means that it's false, that it has no existence at all. Because the kingdom of heaven is always all right. It can't be added to. And the flattery, the reward from society, the medal, the title on the door, senator so-and-so, all that is something added. And once it is added, now, horribly, we have to fight to retain it. I feel affirmed at having won the election in the state race. I feel affirmed. And everybody congratulates me, right? They crowd around and they have the champagne and all that. Already, I'm afraid that I'll lose the next election. Can't you see that there's only one right reward with a capital R, which is to be free of all the rewards of this world, so that nobody has anything to give you? You men who, and this is unconscious with you, might be ashamed of it. You might even have an emotional reaction when I tell you this. You men who want sex from women, and that becomes your thrilling reward, and you fawn and you do all the wrong things in order to get sex from a woman, that is a part of this false reward. And even if a woman smiles at you, you feel good for about 10 minutes. And then, you miserable little wretch, you become her slave. That's right. And she knows it. And either openly or subtly, she will take advantage of it because she's as sick as you are. You men, you free yourself right now and forevermore from being a slave to what a woman can give you sexually. If you don't do that, you're not going to make it very high up on the mountain, because that's a very, very sex is a very powerful thing, is it not? Emotionally, and it's on your mind a lot, and you yearn and all that stuff. You free yourself of that difficulty, that problem, and many others will fall away, because the weaker ones will fall away as you conquer the higher one, or rather, as you permit the higher to conquer this lower. Besides, don't you know, men, don't you know that a woman despises your weakness? Right. Oh, she despises it. I suppose if there's a title of the little short talk I'm going to give now, it would be called The Man Who Wasn't Chosen. Am I talking about you? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. The woman who wasn't chosen. So you go to high school. Remember? How many have you that good a memory? Some of us. And you didn't get chosen. You remember you went out for the football team, and since there's only 11 members and 45 boys went out, you didn't get chosen for the football team. Remember that? And then you went to the high school party, graduation party, and you didn't get chosen to march down with one of the girls. The girl didn't choose you. Then you go out in the world and you drafted in the Army, and you didn't get chosen to rise any higher than a buck private. You go out in the world and you look around for work to do, and you're not chosen to be hired at the cracker factory or whatever. This builds in very much, Linda, with what you asked. See how this connects with a sense of failure? All of us feel unchosen, left out. And unless you see the very heart of everything we talk about in this class, unless you see that there's no one there, no entity, no person to be either chosen or rejected, unless you see that, then you'll have to continue to suffer from feeling unwanted, rejected, alone, lonely. You're all lonely, aren't you? And you can't understand it, can you? Because you do everything possible to push it away, all those frantic business activities, and you have lots of friends. You may have a wife or husband, girlfriend, boyfriend. And especially all the thoughts that you permit to course through your mind day and night. You would think that their thoughts would be some kind of a companions, wouldn't you? But they're false companions that can't give you a sense of completion, because thoughts can never do that. What you can do is come to an end of thinking about yourself at all. And, you know, I know what goes through your mind, and especially through minds of people who don't want these kinds of teaching. You run into one peril after another. Get somebody in here. Shut it off or something. One of the most perilous of perils that you will run into as you study these things is the following idea. You are told here to stop living your own life. You're told to stop choosing ways to be happy. You're told to stop trying to find security. You're told to stop trying to be accepted by society, by other people. You're told in a new, unique way to no longer try to control, command, direct your own life. This is what you're told to do. What a horrible situation to get into. You're going to reject that because a certain lie in you will form when you're told this, and has done it 1,000 times in all of you, that will say, but if I abandon direction of my life, if I don't choose ways to be happy, if I don't try to find ways to be secure, if I drop all my striving to command my life, then my life will fall apart. Then I'll have no command of my life at all. There'll be no one to take charge. What a dreadful thing to ask of me, to ask me to let go of directing my own life. If I do that, my life will collapse, right? Now, you don't know your thing. Don't you think you do? You have to go through an awareness of this stage before you can come out on the other side. The devil in every one of us never works harder than when you reach the point where you say, but what will happen to me if I let go of choosing, of trying to be happy, as you say I must do? And the devil tells you, if you let go, something bad will happen to you. In short, there'll be no controller at all. Therefore, your life will be a wreck. Now, some of you are a little bit ahead of me, I suspect, and you may know what I'm going to say next. which is this. What is the condition of your life now, with you trying to choose, direct, select, striving to make it a happy, complete life, a contented life? You see, your selections haven't made it, have they? They haven't lived up to the promises that you thought they gave to you. It was a lie after all. All right? Having faced that the director of your life, the chooser of your life is this truck way up on the tall mountain, racing recklessly down the road. That truck is, quote mark, choosing to crash into the trees, crash into people, crash into a house. That's what the choosing and the truck are one thing. There's no conscious choice, isn't it? So this is the present state where everything we do to make us happy, right, to get in the right direction, is a mad rush of the truck down the hill. Haven't we experienced this in our own bumps 10 times a day into obstacles, including ourselves? Having faced the fact that my intellectual attempts to find myself have failed, having reached that point, if I can now bring everything into remembrance that we've learned here, then I see quite clearly that the only thing I have to do is to do nothing, which is not easy to do nothing, because I'm still so hardened in my conviction that I must choose or perish. But the choosing has put me into the state of perishing, daily perishing, as I presently am. So I sit back very quietly, go slow, as I said we were going to do today, and see as an experiment what happens when I say, first of all, as best I can, now this is legitimate, don't go wrong on this, where I say to myself, from now on, I'm not going to care whether I'm chosen or rejected. I am not going to care. Even the beginning statement like this, which is, we know it's intellectual so far, you don't understand it, but you are beginning to activate the I that is not the usual I that does care whether you're accepted or rejected. You're trying to say I consciously in a higher way already, understanding that you were not referring to the usual I, which is frantically trying to protect and promote itself. I'm going to, as an experiment, find out what happens to the so-called me the next time I am rejected by someone, the next time I meet what I call a failure situation. I'm going to sit back and just watch what goes through me instead of feeling disappointed, instead of feeling hostile, just to see if I can prove personally, which is the only thing worthwhile, to see if I can prove personally the truth that I've heard here in this class. I'm going to cease to be an atheist. I'm going to cease to trust my neurosis, which always wants to choose this over that. I'm going to cease to believe in that. I'm going to cease to trust that. I'm going to become distrustful of all my old nature thoughts and actions and reactions, and see what happens as a result of not trusting them anymore. I'm going to get very, very suspicious, not neurotically so, but with a kind of a new kind of suspicion that's the beginning of clarity, which takes honesty and courage to see that I've never before in my life had the courage to probe into this and see that I was nothing but a mad truck But you had no choice. You never choose anything when you're asleep. What you do is fall in the path of least resistance. Accidental forces from the outside tell you where to go and what to do. For example, Phyllis, your son is here in Boulder City under the law of accident. He simply followed you up here. How many things in your life right now are the result of accidental, mechanical, unconscious choices? I will tell you that you will be unhappy with them because you thought that they would give you something and they gave you nothing at all. There is a way in which you can go through your day in which you're not looking forward to anything at all good, quote mark, coming to you, in which you are not avoiding anything. You're not avoiding a crisis. You're not trying to hide out from anything internally or externally, which doesn't mean you do stupid things. But because you're just so loaded with authentic command, with cosmic confidence, so awake to that, so living from that, you don't care what happens to you. Because you are not involved in your own life anymore. Can you imagine a life like that, where you're not personally involved in what happens to you? In reality, you are not. When you see this, you tell me how you're ever going to be concerned over the outcome of anything. You tell me what you're going to worry about when there's no person there to worry over. Then the world goes by you, the world comes into your life, the world departs from your life, and you're living entirely apart from it. Having refused the rewards that this society offers, having refused the rewards of your own inner deluded world, having refused those rewards, there can't be any pain anymore, because it's the acceptance of those rewards that brings on the fear that the reward will someday slip away from you, that you will indeed lose the election, or lose your sex partner, or lose your youth, lose your reputation, you lose your good name, which is nothing is more phony than anyone's good name. Nothing is more phony than our respectability. If you don't have any respectability, you won't have any fear of losing it, right? Then you're way, way above society's sickness, in which it says that this man is more respectable than another man. The honorable judge. Heaven save us from the judges. The honorable representative, the honorable mayor. Thank heaven that heaven has already saved us from good men in this world. You're going to have to be very alert to your expectations from something in time, from something in society that will keep you going as you think you should be kept going. Anything that the world gives you, either the inner world or the outer world, that seems to confirm you is a delusion. There is a way in which you can completely transform your inner nature. So listen, so that you fear nothing whatever. I said, so that there is no fear whatever. Truth, which is complete, fears nothing. Truth doesn't think. Truth is right now, in the present moment. It exists right now, complete, altogether in charge, without any effort to do so. This is the way any human being in the physical body can live right here in this world. You won't yearn for anything. You won't seek anything. You won't be concerned over anything at all. You've got it made. in a way which you would never have believed you could have had it made. All this that we've talked about is a gift that is given to you automatically, effortlessly, naturally, promptly, as you refuse the gifts of this world, as you refuse the gifts of your own mind, which is frantically trying to palm off empty packages, beautiful packages nicely wrapped in pink paper and ribbon on top of it, nothing inside. And every time you get one of these packages, your heart leaps, and you open the ribbon, you unwrap it, and there's nothing inside. This is the gifts of sickness. Aren't you tired? Aren't you tired of the thrill of getting the package and then looking inside and seeing there's nothing there? You're going to have to phone the delivery man and tell him, send no more packages to my door. I'm tired of paying the freight. I'm tired of paying the bill and then seeing there's nothing inside. The pretty package arouses hope that overcomes what little insight we have into the emptiness of the previous package.
Right.
And you know, why the frown, Sally?
Oh, nothing. I was just thinking of a comment you told us once. We forget the pain.
Forget the pain, yes. Don't we, though?
Right.
Besides, every package is a little different shape,
Yes.
a different color wrapping, different ribbon, and the little card that says who it's from is always a little different. We say, and as Joan said, we say, this is it. Nothing is it.
And we're constantly trying to make our packages as pretty as possible, both sides,
Yes, right.
or attractive.
Unless you come to every class, and this is the most important thing in your life, you understand you are still the receiver of pretty and empty packages in which you are putting your trust. Well, maybe the day will come when you'll look at the last package and say, this is the last one I'm going to accept for delivery. Make the cosmic phone call and call off the delivery man. And he always demands a price, you know, for that empty package. It isn't free.
Right. Yes. Right.
Extra postage due.
Yeah.
Richard.
If I begin to let go a little bit, do I become more desperate?
Yes. Desperate that you're going to lose your quote mark riches. That's why you have to get more desperate, see? Get so desperate you think you're going to have to get so desperate you're going to think you're going to go mad. You already are, but you're beginning to be aware of the madness. Yes.
Could this desperation be anger? Is that part of it?
Pardon?
Could the desperation be anger?
It's very much involved with it, yes. And what you're angry at is that you can't be your own God unto yourself.
Yeah.
You want to blow up the world in your hatred and violence and hostility to prove that you are a God unto yourself. You know these super sickies who put bombs in railroad stations and kidnap people and murder them? Do you understand the real psychology of that? What they're trying to do? I have power to destroy. Therefore, I exist as a separate individual. I can destroy. Therefore, I exist as a separate entity. They'll never prove it. They just have to keep killing, and they'll never prove it to themselves. They kill 1 million people.
Vernon, you mentioned comparison. And why do we compare ourselves with other people?
Yeah.
Is it necessary for the survival of the ego to be constantly comparing itself?
Well,
It seems like it's been always in comparison.
it lives by comparison. Unless I create you, I can't be me. When I get rid of you, I go.
And it also creates the conflict.
Yes. We're rivals now. I want more money than you. I'm the labor worker against the factory owner. I'm the private against the general, or this enemy soldier against that enemy soldier. Your mental health can be judged by the number of or lack of it, by the number of enemies you have or don't have. If you have a lot of enemies, you're a super sickie. And if you don't have a lot, you will then have the capacity to create them wherever you go. Right? How easy it is to make an enemy out of anything or anyone. The slightest headline in the paper. Do you know anyone or live with anyone, or are you the one who looks at the slightest news item, anything, and makes a critical, sarcastic remark? That's your enemy that is found necessary, your ego found necessary to create. I could do better than that, for example. Or why do they behave that way? I behave nice. Why do they behave that way? Larry, please.
Vernon, isn't the outcome anger or tears provocated from fear that we refuse to see? Isn't all of it
Oh, yeah, yes.
by fear that we refuse to accept?
Very much joined together, yes. And please, please, never, never forget that the fear-anger, the fear-anger, which always go together, both are fakes. They're absolute fakes that you still believe in. You believe in them because they are you. Understand? You believe in your own fear because you want to believe in it, because the fear is you, the only you've got. If you gave up fear, you would give up you, and you fear to do that. But that fear is a fake. I'll tell you, we sure go a long ways here. Much deeper than we're going to catch in a 30-second meditation, right? We'll take a couple more minutes, then have a break. Don't be afraid to give yourself up. Or do it while afraid. Either way is fine.
Yesterday when you spoke of lofty heights where something else will take over for us, the living. As I go home, I examine this. I have a problem that I want those lofty heights now without doing any work. I constantly keep insisting.
Say that last part again.
I keep constantly insisting that I want those lofty heights without going through the hell of it.
Yes, and that's impossible.
Yeah.
That's still wanting a reward. You want the reward of thinking about the top of the mountain without going through the hell that's necessary first. You know what going through hell really consists of, among other things we could explain. It means going through your belief in hell. You occupy hell as a state because you believe in it and prefer to believe in it. Now, I'm not saying it's an illusion in one way. In another way it is. You see, you have to see both sides at once. If you are suffering the pangs of hell, that is a fact. Right?
Yeah.
We're not lying about anything. Then we become a religious hypocrite if we don't admit it. We are saying that the hell that we are experiencing is valid only as long as we don't understand our non-existence. When I understand that I don't have to be someone who gets the reward or someone who is rejected, doesn't get the reward, as long as I see I don't have to exist as either one of these people who are both the same false person, when I see that, then I vanish, then hell vanishes, my suffering vanishes. Then there's the pure kingdom of heaven within. But I believe in hell. I want to remain in the hell of my selfhood because I'm afraid to be without my hellish self, because I don't know what the alternative is. I choose hell, I perpetuate hell because I've taken that as eternity. I've taken that as the only life possible. And hell can't believe in heaven. Time can't believe in the timeless state. It can't. We're here to awaken the small bit of us that can begin to realize everything I just said. The beginning of the realization of that is not time, is not hell, is something that has no preference for suffering. This is what we're talking about when we say if we can attain the 0.1% of rightness, then our hard work in this class and outside the class can cause this one little pearl to begin to grow. Yes. Now, lad, you must have something stronger than death to survive death. At first you hate anyone telling you the truth. Then if you want to yield, then that'll turn into something entirely different. This is the beginning of understanding that the whole universe belongs to you when you are the universe instead of being yourself. Being yourself in the wrong way is nothing but wretchedness. Nothing but 1,000 questions a day with not a single answer. You'll give yourself 1,000 answers to your 1,000 questions, and they'll all be wrong. Are you afraid of missing something? You afraid life is passing you by? Huh? You afraid you're not going to make it? When you say to yourself, I'm not going to make it, what's the it? When you say to yourself, I'm not going to make it, what's the it? You don't know. Therefore, isn't it a wrong question? A question that instead of seeking an answer, you should investigate the question itself, why it comes up in the first place. Now, can you see the connection between what Margaret just said, which is a fact, and the fact that every man must work out his own salvation? That's a solid religious spiritual truth. Every man must work out his own salvation. And all the phonies and the do-gooders and the bleeding hearts are not doing it for them at all, but for themselves. What do they want? The reputation, the votes, the salary, the self-image, or whatever. How clear it becomes, how easy it becomes to live your own life unconcerned with other people when you see what responsibility you have, instead of trying to avoid your responsibility for yourself by saying, I'm responsible for my brother. You're going to get kicked by your brother. If you move real fast, as Dauphine suggested, in order to be balanced, you must also be able to move real slow, so that you can go fast in your mind when necessary, or just cut it off and just drift when necessary. Not drift asleep, but drift very alert. That is, you're sitting back, and instead of being active in your mental activities, you're being passive, and you're sitting back, and you're watching everything that's going on. This is what is known as balance in your psychic system. In this way, you'll be able to adjust to the exterior world quite rightly. If the world moves fast, down at the business office, you can move fast with it without being disturbed. If it slows down, you can slow down with it. But at all times, you're in charge, because the directions to go either slow or fast are coming from a higher source, not from your own identification with either side, with either going fast or going slow. And that's a marvelous and a very relaxed way to live. There's no resentment if someone hurries you, because you can move hurriedly when necessary, because it's a natural part of you. Remember the exercises we've had occasionally in which you're told if you move real fast, some of you are fast walkers, then you're to go slow. If you're real slow, you're to go fast. This is to get you acquainted with the other side, and also get you acquainted with your present side, that you're a real slow mover, real slow thinker. Or if your mind moves so fast that you can't think clearly and logically, then see that and slow down, and then logic will come. Yes, false enthusiasm toward building the business and all that seems to be taking us somewhere purposeful, doesn't it? Therefore, we have to see that any purpose that I have as Vernon and you have as Chuck, any purpose such as that can't lead anywhere but into a deeper involvement with Vernon or Chuck, and we're already involved enough to be miserable. Now let me add something, a very fine point. Now I've brought it before, but maybe some of you haven't heard this before. There is a part of us that rightly wants to work, that wants to expand, that wants to express itself. That is a part of our evolvement, and that part is not wrong. But when we get to this point, then anything we do is fine for the doing in it of itself without a demand for a certain result that will feed the false self. Because the false self isn't there anymore to have a demand that this or that will happen. This means you have indeed transcended a demand that if you put this cause into motion, you should have that effect. And you'll live a very, very, very blissful life. As active as you want to be. Be as active as you want to be. Sounds like a contradiction, and it's impossible to explain with words. If you want to double your business, double your business. But what if you, in trying to double your business, the business flops? If it doubles or if it flops, it makes no difference. Because you are not involved with either one of them. You're living your life. Look. Try someday to try someday to do nothing. Impossible. You have to be doing something with your life. Why not live it free of yourself and free from results? Besides, you don't activate your own life at all. I didn't raise my left hand. I didn't give a talk tonight. A talk was given, and the hand was raised. Why do you personalize everything? Well, because we're all self-centered little egotists, that's why. Wait till you see that God does indeed activate and energize the universe, including you raising your hand. You begin to see that. You begin to be marvelously free of yourself. Then you just live because you no longer have any concern for your life. You no longer have any responsibility for the results of it. Boy, girl, you'll walk the world free. You have no friends or you have 1,000,000 friends. What's the difference? Everything is right inside. And if you want to know what that is all about, you try it for yourself. And you stop listening to your sick friends. Mark. The rest of you. I know that probably all of you to one degree or another, you're in lots of contact with people who are not interested in these things, aren't you? And you're swayed by them, you're influenced by them, you think that they're right, you think they have strength, you think they're clever, You think they're going somewhere? All your friends are going right down into the marsh. Oh no, excuse me. They are in the marsh. They're on the bridge. If you don't think so, you make one little remark where they have a lot of pride, and you'll find out that they're right on that bridge ready to jump off into suicidal anger, suicidal hostility, suicidal hurt feelings. You know that, don't you? Where can they be touched, all right? Where can I be touched? We have 2 or 3 more minutes. I will tell you that although it's not the full test, one major test of your real sincerity is whether you are here in this room on meeting nights or not. And don't you, I'm talking to people who are not here now, can you imagine that? Don't you kid. How's that? Don't you tell me how smart you are, how interesting you are, how much you like me and these teachings when you're not here at every meeting. Go ahead, please. Yes, and just watch what happens when you live with the failure instead of trying to do something about it. You know what you'll finally discover? Listen to this. She said she's a failure. All right. You'll find out that failure is simply and only an idea. And the reason you have the idea of failure is because you have one of success. Get rid of both of them and watch how easy life becomes.
This Vernon Howard tape will be continued now on side 2.
What are you going to take with you after you die? What do you have presently inside of you that can transcend death of the physical body? Do you think you have anything? The physical body that you're so proud of, that you care so much about, that's going to come to an end, is it not? Then do you think there might be something more valuable than the physical self? Do you think there might be something more valuable than all the thoughts you have about yourself? What's going to happen to all those thoughts you have about yourself when the physical body isn't acting as a house for them anymore? All of these thoughts that swirl around the supposed you. Maybe then there is something more valuable than my thoughts about myself, than the physical body. Maybe there's something more valuable than my hatred. Maybe there's something much higher than my love of irritation. Maybe there's something higher than my adoration of feeling sorry for myself. Maybe there's something higher than the pleasure of thinking that I have enemies, something higher of thinking that I have been cheated, that other people have more than I have. I will tell you, there's something 1,000 miles higher than that. But you have to give that up first. You can't rise unless you let go of all the weights that are holding the balloon down. The balloon will be moored to the ground unless you drop those sandbags. But you don't call them sandbags. You call them your security. You call them leading an exciting life. Do you know your faces? I'm talking personally now. You know your faces just even as I'm sitting here now and I'm looking at you. Don't you know your faces are telling me the truth about you? Your faces and your manner, everything about you is telling me what you really value, what you really prefer. Whether you know it or not, I know it because I can read it. That's what you're valuing. You're valuing your refusal to listen. Your refusal to listen to something that's higher than your ordinary thoughts. You're getting the results daily of what you actually value. You're getting it. And that's why you're so sad. Do you have any idea of the rage and fury that you still have in you that you haven't begun to dig out yet? You haven't begun to dig out the rage in you. What person in your life is imprisoning you so that if you could get rid of him or her, you'd be, you think, free? Aren't you rageful toward that person? Aren't you rageful toward the circumstances that brought you where you are today? I will tell you, you can be free of everyone and everything right now, tonight, in a way which, again, you can't imagine. Look at all those thought ties you have to Mama and Papa and ex-wife and ex-husband. Look at all the thought ties to the future, what you call the future. There is hope, real hope, for anyone who loses everything. If you have much, you have hopelessness too. Say your name to yourself. That is in time, and therefore that will perish. What is not your name will endure. And remember, I told you earlier that even if you can't understand what I just said, there is an understanding of that, and that understanding of it can be your understanding. Not you with the name, but you without the name, you without the label. Seem to have. We're just ignorant. That's why they have power. Isn't that encouraging? Simply because we're ignorant, these forces that have taken over our life do indeed have power over us, because we don't understand that they don't have any real power at all. Awareness has 100% power over mechanicalness. When that is understood, then mechanicalness will have its right place. What do you think you're going to take with you after you die? Do you think you're going to take your thoughts with you? Not at all. They perish. Aren't you aware that your thoughts perish, are born and perish 1,000 times a day, 5,000 times a day? And yet, in your confusion and your delusion, you somehow think that the thoughts you have are going to be taken into eternity. That somehow you, your thoughts of who you are, this self of yours, you somehow think that they have permanence, and they have none at all. This is why you fear death, because you know very well the impermanence of thinking, self-thinking. So you say, if I think I am marvelous, or I think I am spiritual, or I think I'm a fake, You are thinking these thoughts about yourself, and at least there's a self there to think about. But you're in such agony knowing how you have to keep all these self-thoughts going, because if you didn't keep them going, they would indeed perish, as it is natural and right for them to do, and that's your terror. You fear death because you don't understand what eternity actually consists of. Eternity consists of the ending of all self-centered thoughts. If all self-revolving thoughts were to disappear, you would understand both time and eternity, and you would then be in eternity and yet not you. Now, I've just told you about it, and you're going to continue to think the way you usually think, aren't you? Maybe someday you'll crack through. Maybe someday you'll stop trying to save yourself, which can't be done, and come back to the very, very elementary religious principles which we were taught mechanically when we were younger, which is simply that God alone, truth alone, reality alone can deliver us from our miserable, wretched little selves. That is a fact. But you see, you want to keep God and you going at the same time. No go. When you see the falseness of you saving yourself and let go, then God will appear. And it will be completely unlike anything that you've presently known. It can't be thought about. It can't be planned. It can't be held on to. It can't be anticipated. It can't be yearned for. What you can yearn for is not God, because you don't know who he is, but what you can yearn for is the ending of the pseudo-idol that you've set up inside of yourself. The idol that lies to you. Oh, it lies to you by saying all day long, just around the corner is my salvation. And every time you think it's just around the corner and turn that corner, you see that it's around the next one. And this is how you keep yourself in place as the seeker. I am a seeker after spiritual truths. If you're a seeker, may I ask you why you have never found? You haven't, you know. But the seeking, what you call seeking, which is seeking amiss, gives you something to do with yourself, and with that you are satisfied, because now no effort is required of you. Nothing new is required of you. Just lay back in the boat, asleep, and let it drift downstream. Never mind whether truth's yelling on the bank, wake up man, wake up woman. It's better to dream that you're drifting into a beautiful place than to wake up and work hard for paddling toward the shore. You'll have no incentive. Listen to this, please. You'll have no incentive for paddling toward the shore until you see where you really are. Right in the middle of that raging river carrying you down toward the waterfall. But imagination is so powerful in human beings. A man can be desperate, frantic, drunk, fighting, and still say, this is a good life. What he is really saying is, I won't give up anything, including my self-centeredness. I won't, because I'm afraid of what will happen to me. Human beings living in a state of death say to themselves, I won't listen to truth, for I'm afraid it will lead me into death. The death that truth will lead you into is the beginning of the resurrection and eternal life. Just run through your mind now as I'm talking, please. You have to now work a little bit. Run through your mind right now as I'm talking to you one thing that baffles you. Now run through your mind another thing that you just don't get about this class, about your personal life, about why you used to get into so much trouble, the why you're so afraid of yourself, why your life is so uncontrolled. You can select from 1 to a dozen things that's wrong in your life right now that you can't comprehend, and then listen now to what I'm going to tell you. There is something, or shall we personalize it or humanize it, I guess. There is someone who does understand what you don't and can't understand. Do you remember at the very start of the meeting, we brought that up just a little bit? You have insisted upon living from your present nature, your present way of thinking, and taking that as the only possibility. But when you take that as the only way to think, you must then enshrine that, because you have taken yourself as the thinker, and now you're stuck with yourself. But having come to the conclusion that your confusions and problems and difficulties is all that there is for you, having come to that conclusion, having frozen in that, you'll have to swim around in that pool that you've created for yourself and have no possibility of climbing out of it. Every once in a while in this class, we come to the point where it seems that nothing can be done, that we've come to an end of the trail where we say, but what am I going to do next? What am I going to do now? And I've just given you one of those positions where you're so engrossed, involved in yourself, and can't think your way out. You can't think your way out. What am I going to do? What you can do is cease to get panicky over your own question. The question that you bring up to yourself, how can I stop thinking? You talk about stopping thought. How can I do it? What you can do is cease feeding your delusion by ceasing to ask frantically, but what can I do? I've given you the secret of self-liberation in the last 2 or 3 minutes. This requires a lot of work. You're going to have to slow down. You're going to have to stop. You're going to have to stop wanting to walk out onto that bridge, because at the same time you're walking out onto it, you are not only the actor, but you're also the spectator. You're never off stage when you're lost. You're always watching yourself, and you're thinking of the note. What note would be the most impressive? And I'll put a rock on it on top of the bridge, then it won't fall off, then they'll find it. You're always on stage wanting an audience for what you're going to do. As if anyone cares. You don't care. You don't care what happens to you. But the whole thing is so confused that you can't think clearly about anything. When you can't think clearly about anything, why do you persist in it? Why do you put that expression on your face in this class sometimes and say, but Vernon, and then you go into it. Nice drama. The facts are as follows. There exists, ladies, there exists, gentlemen, an intelligence which is not what you are. There exists a way of meeting life, a way of reacting to life, which has nothing to do with your type of mind at all. The type of mind you now have can't find it, doesn't know anything at all about it, moreover, is the enemy of this enlightened, liberated state that we're talking about. You, as you presently think, are the enemy of truth. Each one of us in this room, if we're living from the dark old nature, we're the enemy of truth. How can I begin to penetrate the higher level? You said that that darkness can't enter into light, quite obviously. Okay, we come right back to where we started. Giving up means to see your thoughts, trying to save yourself, and then refuse the salvation offered by your own lying nature. All of you, every one of you, have your pet saviors. And you could take a piece of paper and write 1,000 of them. Do you remember we talked about nervous laughter a little earlier? Do you know that that's one of them? Huh? Being apologetic. You see, I usually don't make mistakes like that, is what this false little imp is saying. I usually don't make mistakes like that. This time I happen to make a little mistake. So you see, check her out, lady, I'm really nicer than you think. And to cover it up, and to make it appear that I'm nice and pleasant and agreeable, I make a nervous little laugh. You write down when you have a chance. Maybe you'll begin to get what I'm getting at. I will not worship nervous laughter. That's what you're worshiping at that minute. Because if you didn't do that, if you didn't distract yourself with this emotionalism, with this apology, with an audience, of course, then you'd be forced to face the fact that you did make this little tiny mistake. And maybe 2 minutes after that, you could see that you made another mistake, and another one, and another one. Then maybe someday you'll be able to bear the astonishing, astounding, shattering fact that from the day you were born up until the present time, you have never, ever, 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 ever done a single thing right. You, myself included, have never done a single thing right. There is no doer of rightness at all. Now, and you'd better thank heaven for what I'm going to say next. There is no individual doer of rightness, not you, not me, but there is rightness. The little hint, the little glimpse that we've got is what keeps us coming back here, isn't it? We've seen the mistakes we've made. We've seen that lying about them with nervous laughter or anything else doesn't do a thing but perpetuate it. The very beginning of seeing that we're always distracting ourselves, refusing to face ourselves as we are, the very beginning of seeing that is the beginning of the hint, the glimpse that there's another state. I want to leave, and then we'll have a break. I want to leave this supreme thought with you. Although you can't understand it, although you don't know how to think about it, and you can't think about it at all, there is an intelligence with a capital I that is not my nervousness, that is not your hostility. There is a purity that has nothing to do with my impurity. I'm telling you now. I don't lie to you. You understand? I'm telling you that this purity exists. It exists for anyone who will follow these teachings through the hell that burns up egotism, that burns up conceit, that burns up lying, that burns up a love of screaming at yourself or another person or at life. In this class, you will be told, you will be led right into the middle of your own hell, and you were given one 5 minutes ago when I said, notice your nervous laughter. Do you think that the dark parts of you are even going to be willing to have you do that? If you're faithful in very small exercises like that one, then you have asked, prayed for more difficult ones, and they will be given to you. A beautiful moment in your inner progress is when you see that you have an extremely difficult task ahead of you. Not in discouragement over it, but simply know, just as clear as that wall, that there is something wrong with you. When you get this clarity, that very clarity always includes in it the beautiful idea, the marvelous truth that it can be accomplished. That is the task that has now been made clear to you. Oh, you know how you're so jealous of that man? You're so envious of that woman, of that group of people? You know that that is your state. The seeing of that is also the seeing of the fact that as you let go of all efforts to solve your jealousy for yourself, to do anything with it. If you do anything with it, you'll cover it up and be just as jealous, calling yourself non-jealous. What a life. What? I was going to say, can you imagine? But you can't, and I can't. Can you conceive? Can you conceive a life that is lived for you? You're not conned by success seminar speakers anymore, or conned by your own excitement over them. But your life is now in another's hands because you have yielded it to these other hands. You can use the word you want, God or reality. We'll take a break. Either you never learned it in the first place, or you forget constantly that your first, foremost, and only necessary task in life is to rescue yourself. In order to do that, you must save all your thoughts, energies, directions toward that end. You must conserve, you must channel, you must put everything you have in your entire psychic system toward rescuing your own real nature. That is, bringing it up from the unconscious. One thing that you do to waste your energy, to divert yourself, to stay asleep, is to get involved 100 times a day in small little dumb trips. 100 little vagrant, unnecessary, useless thoughts, which take you away 100 times a day from where you should be and what you should be doing. And one of these false thoughts, these thieving, robbery, criminal thoughts, is the false belief that you must be involved in other people's problems. Whether it's a very, very small difficulty that they don't have enough money for this or that, or a large difficulty where they're seriously ill or seriously in trouble, we fall for a certain cunning con line 100 times a day and waste our energy because we're not aware of what is going on, of what is happening. Someone will come up to you, which they do all day long, and you know it. They come up to you and they tell you his or her problem, difficulty. And so, because you're asleep, you automatically go into the, quote, proper, unquote, right, quote, unquote, reaction. What would it be? It could be sympathy, which is not sympathy at all. It could be giving them advice. Well, if you'll do this, you watch yourself when someone comes up and tells you his problems, how there is a double reaction in you. The first reaction is the compulsion to answer. And after all, the person said something to you, and you feel that you have to answer. But right along with that, and right embedded in it, is a resentment against saying what you have to say. I mean, even if you toss it off real fast, if you can be very, very watchful of your reaction, you'll find yourself saying something that will be a very nice shock to you. And I'll guarantee you, you don't know yourself at all. I will guarantee you that you will see yourself saying something like this when someone comes up and tells you his problems. Something like this, and I'll just speak as it comes to me. Knock it off. What has that to do with me, the fact that you have this trouble? What are you blabbing to me about that for? I don't have anything to do with that. Why are you telling me this? Why are you crying on my shoulder? This is a very unacceptable reaction to your ideal self, the artificial self that you have built up and that a lying society told you you had to do. Be kind to people, help them, do your share of lifting the burden in this world. And so you go along with that, never knowing the mountains of resentment that you have built up in yourself because you have never seen your actual reaction, your real reaction to when this person comes up with your problems. And also, you look at their face and you know that they are expecting something from you, and you know what they're expecting. It could be 1,001 things. They want your advice, or just a sympathetic look, or they want you to make a decision for them. And so that expectation right in front of you, you look at it and you say, now, I must not disappoint people. I must not disappoint him or her, wife or husband even, because then they would be disappointed in me and I will suffer a loss of some kind. Someone right in this room, for example, when you're passing each other, coming through the hall there, and someone looks expectantly at you, this is the first time you've seen each other since you met here this morning, and someone looks at you, and you have a quick glance at them, and you feel you must do something, you must say good morning, but you also wish you could just walk by and be more real than that, than to waste your energy. It's not a sign of friendship to mechanically and resentfully go into a wave of your hand if you really don't want to do it, if it really isn't necessary. Try to remember that you are constantly, carelessly permitting yourself to get involved in 100 small involvements each day, because you don't know yet fully and from yourself that you really don't have to be involved. Now, you're living in a very, very sick, very complaining world. There's no way, possibly, that you can avoid people coming to you with their difficulties. You sit in the bus, and the slightest friendly gesture on your part, do you want the curtain down or up, and he starts telling you his troubles, right? There's no way you can avoid it. But there is something you can do, which is begin to remember everything that you've heard, and just try to see how you want to live your own life. You don't want to get involved at all, not really. How about the self-accusation that may come to you at that point? Well, marriage is a two-way street, give and take. Friendships, you should be nice to people. You wish that that rule didn't exist because you sense something very much wrong with trading your integrity with another human being. So in conclusion with this part, begin to dare the disapproval of people when you don't force yourself to wave at them because they're expecting you to. You take the lead in being the courageous one who exchange glances with them perhaps as you pass through that doorway, but you be the courageous one and you be the teacher of them as well as of yourself, that you're not hating them. No, there's nothing wrong. You glance at each other. You don't have to fall all over each other. Well, you saw each other last night. And go about your business. And you'll sense when you do this the beginning of reclaiming your own independence, your own self-command. And the accusations in doing this will continue for a long time, that you had better do that because you always do it. You had better enter into sympathy, and you better sit there and listen to their problems, and you'd better at the proper, appropriate moment nod your head and make the suitable remark so that they will feel that you're a nice, sympathetic person. Never do anything to keep your images of being nice in place. Never do anything to keep your images of being nice in place. This would be an authentically new experience for you, and a little bit shaky one at the start, because you're breaking out of the rut of the old habits that always says, do this and do that. I don't have to get involved with other people or with their problems. Now listen to this and rejoice. I don't have to listen to, and I don't have to get involved with my own problems. Think about that. Did you ever hear anything in your life more startling and more beautiful? I don't have to get involved with my own problems. That's a hoax. That's a belief. That's a mechanical action that I have to listen to the cry, the call of this pain, of this regret, of this sorrow, whatever it might be. It's a false assumption that I have to pay attention to it and then try to do something about it. If you didn't pay attention in the first place, there'd be nothing to do because you would see that the cry is false. Very slowly, but very surely, we begin to understand that the only thing I really have to do is sit back like this and watch the mad world whirl around, outwardly and inwardly, and refuse to get involved. That's a charlatan out there, and that's a charlatan in here that is saying that you have to pay attention to troubles of any kind. The reason we pay attention to them is because first, believing that they're real, we therefore say, well, there must be action toward this difficulty, and who is there to solve it but myself? And so you call on the devil to solve the problem of the devil, which is just what the devil wants you to do. This is one of his traps, one of his very cunning tricks to draw you into it. First to try to get you to believe that there is a difficulty there, and then to get you to believe that you can solve it. But you are the devil who's going to try to solve it. They're all one thing. They're both on the same level. Futility is a marvelous, wonderful state to be in. To be in such a complete state of futility, of not knowing what to do, that you just give up. Not in despair, because when you reach this higher state of futility, and it's a very special state, then you give up because you understand clearly that there is neither nothing you can do and therefore nothing to do. You watch that happen inside of you, and whatever you're doing, you will know what it means to begin to think in a new way. You'll know what it means to be conscious. You'll know what it means to catch a message fully, one of these 1 second, one message a minute that come on down to you. You'll know what it means to catch it fully and to read the little note, the cosmic Western Union message that comes down. You'll feel it as well as see it, and you'll get the message, and that's all there is to it. There are two different kinds of pains. There is the pain of stubbornness, of conceit, in which I want to cling to my own falsehoods. You accuse me of being inconsiderate, of being selfish. I defend myself. That's my idea, that I'm a nice person, and you accuse me of being unnice. I defend myself. There is a certain pain in that self-defense, which, because it's a lie, it's a contradiction, you see. But if you come along and tell me a truthful idea, you tell me that there is something that is above my egotism. There's something that can authentically help me where I can't help myself. And I begin to yield to that. There is also a pain, but it's an entirely different kind now, because it's a pain which fluctuates 1,000,000 miles an hour back and forth between the pain, the fear of giving up myself, and the dim idea that this is not a part. It is a different kind of a pain than the one I have when I purely defend myself. It's the fear of giving up. And there's a difference in those two kinds. And as you sit here in this room and you watch yourself, try to see that there's a slight, faint difference in the two kinds of pain. The pain of ego, you're not going to tell me what to do. And the pain, what are these truths going to do to me if I keep coming to these classes? At the same time, watch yourself in both cases, and you'll be able to distinguish between the two pains.